Elena Hart's one reckless moment at a Manhattan gala, kissing a stranger just to feel alive, destroys her life in seconds. But when that stranger turns out to be Adrian Voss, one of the city's most dangerous men, destruction becomes opportunity. He offers her a deal, 1 month gathering secrets in exchange for saving her dying mother. No choice. No escape. Just invisibility turned into power, debts traded for danger, and a connection that could cost them both everything. If you're ready for a story where desperation meets desire and survival demands sacrifice, stay until the end. Hit like and drop your city in the comments so I can see how far this journey travels. The crystal chandeliers above the Plaza Hotel ballroom cast fractured light across faces Elena Hart would never know. Faces attached to names she'd only seen in headlines. Senators, CEOs, people whose jewelry cost more than her entire year's rent. She moved through them like smoke. The tray in her hands held champagne flutes worth more than her hourly wage. Her feet ached in the required black heels. Her white serving shirt was starched so stiff it chafed against her collarbone with every step. But none of that mattered because in 4 hours, her shift would end. She'd collect $200 plus whatever scraps of tips the agency bothered to pass along, and she'd go straight to the hospital. Her mother was waiting. Elena had promised her the experimental treatment would happen, had sworn they'd find a way, had lied through her teeth because what else could she do when the woman who raised her was dying and the insurance company kept sending rejection letters? "Excuse me." A woman in an emerald gown waved her over with 2 fingers, not even looking at Elena's face, just the tray. "Is this the Cristal or the Veuve Clicquot?" Elena glanced down. "The Cristal, ma'am." The woman took a glass, handed it to the man beside her, then took another for herself. No thank you. No acknowledgement that Elena existed beyond her function. That was fine. Elena preferred it that way. She circulated through the ballroom, refilling her tray twice, avoiding eye contact, perfecting the art of being present without being seen. The gala was some kind of charity event. She'd stopped reading the placards after the first hour. Cancer research, maybe. Or literacy. The cause didn't matter. These people weren't here to save the world. They were here to be photographed, pretending they cared. "You look exhausted." The voice came from her left, low and male and entirely too close. Elena turned, ready with her service smile, and found herself looking at the bartender. He was young, maybe 30, dark hair that fell just slightly too long across his forehead, like he'd missed his last haircut. Sharp jaw, expensive suit that somehow looked lived in rather than new, and eyes, gray-blue, the color of winter storms, that actually focused on her face instead of sliding past to something more important. "I'm fine," Elena said automatically. "You're not." He leaned against the bar, arms crossed, studying her with an intensity that should have been rude but somehow wasn't. "You've been on your feet for 3 hours. You haven't taken a break, and you're carrying that tray like it weighs 50 pounds. Elena shifted her grip instinctively. "It's my job." "Doesn't mean you have to destroy yourself doing it." She should have walked away. Should have smiled politely and moved on to the next cluster of people pretending she didn't exist. But something in his voice, something that sounded less like pity and more like recognition, made her pause. "You work here?" she asked. "Tonight I do." He gestured to the bottles lined up behind him. "Adrian?" "Elena." "Nice to meet you." Elena, who's fine but clearly isn't. Despite herself, she almost smiled. "Nice to meet you, Adrian, who notices waitresses." "I notice people others overlook." He poured 2 fingers of whiskey into a rocks glass, took a sip, then set it down. "It's a useful skill." "What do you do when you're not bartending charity galas?" His mouth curved slightly. "Various things. Mostly I solve problems." "What kind of problems?" "The kind people can't solve themselves." Vague answer. Deliberate vagueness, actually, which meant he either did something illegal or something boring he didn't want to explain. Elena decided she didn't care. In 3 hours and 47 minutes, she'd never see this man again. "Well," she said, lifting her tray, "I should get back to... When's the last time someone asked if you were okay?" The question landed like a punch. Elena's throat tightened. She blinked hard, forced herself to keep her expression neutral, but something must have shown on her face because Adrian's eyes softened. That long? He said quietly. I'm not offering help. I'm just asking a question. Elena's hands trembled slightly. She set the tray down on the bar before she dropped it. Why do you care? Maybe I'm curious. Maybe I recognize something. He studied her face. You're drowning, aren't you? She should have denied it, should have laughed it off, should have grabbed her tray and disappeared into the crowd where she belonged. Instead, she said, medical debt. My mother, stage 4. The treatment she needs isn't covered, and the bills keep coming, and I work 3 jobs, but it's never enough. So, yes, I'm drowning. Adrian didn't flinch, didn't offer empty condolences, just nodded slowly, like she'd confirmed something he'd suspected. How much do you owe? Why? Humor me. $247,000, give or take. Most people would have gasped, would have called that number impossible. Adrian just took another sip of whiskey, his expression unreadable. That's fixable, he said. Elena laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. Sure, if you know any millionaires who give money to strangers, send them my way. What if I told you I could clear that debt in a month? I'd say you're either lying or about to offer me something illegal. Both are possible. He met her eyes. Would you be interested anyway? Elena's pulse quickened. Every instinct screamed danger. This man was too calm, too confident, too willing to discuss 6-figure sums like they were grocery bills. Whatever he was offering, it came with strings. Thick, barbed strings that would wrap around her neck and pull tight. But her mother was dying. What would I have to do? Elena asked. Exactly what you're doing right now. Be invisible. Listen, remember, report back. You want me to spy for you? I want you to be my eyes and ears in places I can't go. Rich people trust service workers not to matter. You could hear everything and they'd never notice. And if I get caught? You won't, because you're careful. I can tell. Elena shook her head. You don't know anything about me. I know you're desperate enough to have this conversation instead of walking away. I know you're smart enough to ask the right questions. And I know you're strong enough to carry weight that would crush most people. He pushed off the bar, straightening to his full height. That's all I need to know. Why me? Because you're already invisible. Because you need what I'm offering. And because I'm very good at reading people. A crash echoed from across the ballroom. Elena's head snapped around. Someone had dropped a glass. Staff were already moving to clean it up. When she looked back, Adrian was watching her with those unsettling, storm-colored eyes. 1 month, he said. You work for me, gather information at events like this. At the end, your debt disappears. Your mother gets her treatment. You walk away clean. Nothing's that simple. No, but it is that straightforward. Elena's mind raced. This was insane. She didn't know this man, didn't know what he really wanted or what she'd be getting into. For all she knew, he was some kind of con artist who preyed on desperate people at charity events. But what choice did she have? Her mother's doctor had given them 3 months, maybe 4 if they got lucky. The insurance company had denied the appeal. The hospital was talking about payment plans that would stretch for decades. And Elena was so tired, so impossibly bone-deep tired of fighting a battle she couldn't win. I need to think about it, she said. Adrian reached into his jacket, pulled out a card, and placed it on the bar. Plain white. No company name. Just a phone number embossed in black. You have 48 hours, he said. After that, the offer expires. And if I say no? Then you say no. I'll find someone else. But you'll still be drowning. He was right. She hated that he was right. Elena picked up the card, slipped it into her apron pocket, and grabbed her tray. She didn't say anything else, didn't promise anything, just walked back into the crowd where she belonged, leaving Adrian at the bar, watching her disappear. The rest of her shift blurred. She served drinks, cleared plates, smiled when expected. But her mind was elsewhere, turning over Adrian's offer from every angle, searching for the trap she knew had to be there. $247,000. 1 month. It couldn't be real. By the time the event wound down, Elena's feet were screaming and her head was pounding. She collected her pay from the catering supervisor, changed out of her uniform in the service hallway bathroom, and took the subway to Mount Sinai. Her mother was asleep when Elena arrived. The room was dark except for the monitors casting green light across the bed. Margaret Hart looked smaller every time Elena visited, frailer. The cancer was eating her from the inside out, and there was nothing Elena could do to stop it. She sat in the chair beside the bed and pulled out Adrian's card. Just a phone number. No name, no context. No. Elena turned it over in her fingers, feeling the expensive weight of the cardstock. Whoever Adrian was, he had money, real money. The kind that bought embossed business cards and bespoke suits and probably a dozen other things Elena couldn't even imagine. What did he really want? Information, he'd said. But information about what? About whom? And what would he do with it once he had it? Her mother stirred, eyes fluttering open. Elena? I'm here, Mom. Elena tucked the card away and took her mother's hand. How are you feeling? Tired. Margaret's smile was weak. But better now that you're here. Guilt twisted in Elena's chest. Her mother shouldn't have to comfort her. Shouldn't have to pretend everything was fine when they both knew it wasn't. The doctor came by, Margaret continued. He said the pain management is working well. Pain management. Not treatment, not cure. Just management, because that was all they could afford. Elena squeezed her mother's hand. That's good. You look exhausted, sweetheart. Are you taking care of yourself? I'm fine. Don't lie to your dying mother. Mom. I'm not stupid, Elena. I know what's happening. Margaret's eyes, still sharp despite the morphine haze, fixed on her daughter's face. And I know you're killing yourself trying to fix it. I'm not. Stop. Margaret's grip tightened. I've made peace with this. You need to do the same. Elena's throat burned. I can't. You have to. No. The word came out fierce, almost angry. You don't get to ask me to give up on you. I'm not asking you to give up. I'm asking you to let go. They're the same thing. They're not. Elena pulled her hand away, stood up, walked to the window. The city sprawled below, a million lights in the darkness. Somewhere out there, Adrian was probably finishing his shift at the gala. Probably going home to wherever men like him went. Probably not thinking about the desperate waitress he'd offered an impossible deal. What if there was a way? Elena said quietly. A way to what? To pay for the treatment. All of it. Silence. Then, Elena, what did you do? Nothing. Yet. She turned back to face her mother. But someone made me an offer tonight. A chance to clear the debt. Margaret's expression hardened. What kind of offer? The kind that comes with risks. Then the answer is no. You don't even know what it is. I don't need to. If it's risky, it's not worth it. Elena crossed back to the bed. You're worth it. Not like this. Not if it puts you in danger. I'm already in danger, Mom. We're drowning in debt. I'm working myself to death, and it's still not enough. This might be the only chance we get. Margaret shook her head weakly. I won't let you destroy your life for me. Then what am I supposed to do? Just watch you die? If that's what it takes, yes. The words hung between them, brutal and honest. Elena felt tears burning behind her eyes but refused to let them fall. She'd cried enough. Done enough breaking down in hospital bathrooms and subway stations and the dark hours before dawn. I'm going to think about it, Elena said finally. That's all. Just think. Elena, I love you, Mom. I'll see you tomorrow. She left before Margaret could argue further, left before her resolve could crack, left before she had to face the truth that her mother would rather die than let Elena take this risk. But her mother's opinion didn't matter. Not really. Not when Elena was the one who'd have to live with the consequences either way. She took the subway home to her studio apartment in Astoria. 45 minutes, 3 transfers, enough time to turn Adrian's offer over in her mind 100 different ways. The apartment was exactly as she'd left it. Small, cluttered, showing the signs of someone who was never home long enough to clean. Elena dropped her bag by the door, kicked off her shoes, and collapsed onto the futon that served as both couch and bed. Adrian's card sat on her palm, white and stark against her skin. She could call right now, could take the deal, could save her mother and damn the consequences. Or she could tear up the card, flush it down the toilet, and keep drowning one day at a time until there was nothing left to save. Elena pulled out her phone, stared at the number on the card, felt her thumb hovering over the screen. 1 month. $247,000. What kind of man made offers like that to strangers? What kind of woman accepted? She didn't call. Not that night. Instead, she lay awake until dawn, watching shadows crawl across the ceiling, thinking about invisibility and desperation and the price of saving someone you loved. When her alarm went off at 6, she had 3 hours before her shift at the diner started. 3 hours to shower, change, grab coffee, and make a decision that would either save her mother or destroy them both. Elena looked at the card one more time, then she dialed. Adrian answered on the second ring. "I was wondering if you'd call." "I haven't decided yet," Elena said. "But you're considering it. I need more information. What exactly would I be doing? Who would I be watching? What happens if something goes wrong? Meet me tonight and I'll tell you everything." "Where?" He gave her an address in Tribeca. 9 o'clock. Come alone. I'm not stupid enough to walk into a trap. If I wanted to hurt you, Elena, I'd have done it at the gala. This is a business proposition, nothing more. Why should I trust you? You shouldn't, but you're going to anyway because you need what I'm offering more than you need to be cautious. He was right again. She hated that. 9 o'clock, Elena repeated. I'll see you then. He hung up. Elena sat on her futon, phone still pressed to her ear, heart hammering against her ribs. She'd just agreed to meet a stranger in a private location to discuss committing what was probably several kinds of illegal. This was insane, reckless, exactly the kind of decision her mother had begged her not to make. But her mother was dying, and Elena was drowning. And somewhere in Tribeca, Adrian was waiting with an answer to a problem she couldn't solve alone. The rest of the day crawled. Elena worked her diner shift, served coffee and eggs to people who didn't tip, avoided her manager's questions about why she looked so exhausted. She went home, changed into jeans and a sweater, tried to eat, but couldn't force anything down. At 8:30, she left her apartment. The address Adrian had given her led to a converted warehouse with floor-to-ceiling windows and a security system that looked like it cost more than her car. Elena pressed the buzzer, waited, tried not to think about all the ways this could go wrong. The door clicked open. She climbed 3 flights of stairs and found herself in a loft that belonged in an architecture magazine. Exposed brick, polished concrete floors, furniture that managed to be both modern and comfortable. And standing by the windows, silhouetted against the city lights, was Adrian. He'd changed out of his bartender uniform into dark jeans and a gray Henley that somehow looked more expensive than the suit had. His hair was slightly disheveled, like he'd been running his hands through it. When he turned to face her, his expression was unreadable. "You came," he said. "I said I would." People say a lot of things. Few follow through. Elena stepped fully into the loft, letting the door close behind her. "I need to know what I'm getting into." "Fair enough. Drink? I'm not here to socialize. Suit yourself." Adrian poured himself 2 fingers of whiskey, then gestured to the seating area. "Sit. I'll explain everything." Elena perched on the edge of a leather chair, every muscle tense. Adrian settled onto the couch across from her, relaxed in a way that suggested he had absolutely nothing to fear from this meeting. "I run a private intelligence firm," he said without preamble. "We gather information on people who need watching, corrupt politicians, corporate criminals, anyone whose public face doesn't match their private actions." "You're a spy." "I prefer information broker, less dramatic." "Who pays you?" "People who need leverage, activists who want to expose corruption, lawyers building cases, occasionally law enforcement when they need evidence they can't get legally." Elena's stomach tightened. "So you want me to help you break the law?" "I want you to observe and report. What I do with that information is my concern, not yours." That's a convenient distinction. It's the only distinction that matters. You attend events as service staff. You listen to conversations people think are private. You tell me what you hear, that's all. And if I hear something that could get someone killed, Adrian's expression didn't change. "Then you tell me and I handle it." "How?" "However necessary." The answer sent a chill down Elena's spine. This wasn't just information gathering. This was something darker, more dangerous, wrapped in careful words that didn't quite hide the truth. "You're not a good person," Elena said quietly. "No, but I'm useful. And right now, so are you." "Why me specifically? There have to be dozens of waitresses in this city you could use." "Because you're smart enough to understand what I'm offering without needing it spelled out. Because you're desperate enough to consider it. And because when I looked at you tonight, I saw someone who's already invisible. You don't need training. You already know how to disappear. He was right. Elena had spent her entire adult life being overlooked, dismissed, forgotten. She'd perfected the art of existing without being noticed. It was survival. Now Adrian wanted to turn it into a weapon. What happens after the month? She asked. Your debt is cleared, your mother gets her treatment, you walk away and we never speak again. Just like that. Just like that. You're lying. Adrian smiled slightly. Smart. Yes, I'm lying. The truth is more complicated. Then tell me the truth. He set down his glass, leaned forward, elbows on his knees. The truth is that if you're good at this, and I think you will be, I'll want to keep using you. The truth is that once you start down this road, walking away gets harder. The truth is that the people I'm watching are dangerous, and if any of them figure out what you're doing, your life becomes very complicated very quickly. So why would I agree? Because the alternative is watching your mother die while you drown in debt. Because you're already at rock bottom, and I'm offering you a ladder, because sometimes the only choice is between terrible and slightly less terrible. Elena's hands were shaking. She pressed them together, forced herself to breathe evenly. I need guarantees. You won't get them. This isn't that kind of arrangement. Then how do I know you'll actually pay the debt? Adrian stood, walked to a desk in the corner, and returned with a manila folder. He dropped it in Elena's lap. She opened it. Inside were hospital bills. Her mother's bills. Every single one, marked paid in full. That's half, Adrian said. A show of good faith. The other half comes after the month. Elena stared at the papers, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. $123,000. Gone. Just like that. You already paid them, she whispered. I told you I solve problems. This is me solving yours. But I didn't agree yet. You will. We both know it. He sat back down. The only question is whether you do it now or after another week of pretending you have a choice. Elena wanted to throw the folder at him, wanted to scream that he had no right to make decisions for her, to manipulate her like this, to trap her with kindness that wasn't really kindness at all. But he'd paid her mother's bills. He'd already given her more than anyone else ever had. What do you want from me? She asked, voice barely steady. Intelligence, observations, details about who's talking to whom, what deals are being made, what secrets are being kept. You'll attend events, galas, fundraisers, private parties, and report back. That's all. And if I want out before the month is up, then you owe me $123,000 plus interest. I assume you can't pay, which means I own you until the debt is settled, so I'd advise against quitting early. There it was, the trap, the teeth hidden under the bait. Elena closed the folder carefully. When do I start? Friday. There's a fundraiser at the Met. I'll have credentials delivered to your apartment tomorrow. That's 3 days away. I'm aware. And I'm just supposed to… What? Show up and start spying? You've already been doing it your whole life. You just didn't know it had value. Elena stood, folder clutched to her chest. I need to go. You know where to find me. Adrian stayed seated, watching her with those unnerving eyes. And Elena? She paused at the door. Don't tell anyone about this arrangement. Not your mother, not your friends, no one. The moment you do, you become a liability. Understood? Understood. She left without another word, walked down 3 flights of stairs on shaking legs, and emerged onto the street feeling like she'd just signed her soul away. Maybe she had, but her mother's bills were paid. $123,000 of crushing debt gone in a single conversation. Elena looked down at the folder in her hands, then up at the loft windows 3 stories above. Adrian was still visible, a dark silhouette against the light, watching her leave. She should have been terrified. She should have run. Instead, she tucked the folder under her arm and started walking toward the subway, already thinking about Friday, already calculating what she'd need to do to survive the next month, already wondering what kind of person she'd be when it was over. The package arrived Thursday morning, slipped under Elena's apartment door while she was in the shower. No return address. No delivery confirmation. Just a sleek black box with her name written in silver ink across the top. Inside, she found an identification badge for Metropolitan Museum staff, complete with her photo. though she had no memory of anyone taking her picture. Below it sat a small earpiece, a burner phone, and a single note card with instructions written in precise handwriting. Wear the earpiece. Keep the phone on you. Answer when I call. Destroy this note. Elena held the card over her sink and lit it with a match, watching the paper curl and blacken until there was nothing left but ash. She washed it down the drain and stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror. 3 days ago, she'd been drowning. Now she was a spy. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, she felt numb, hollowed out, like she'd already crossed a line so far back that there was no point worrying about the ones ahead. She went to the hospital that afternoon, the folder of paid bills tucked into her bag. Her mother was awake, sitting up in bed with a book she wasn't really reading. "You look different," Margaret said when Elena walked in. "Different how?" "I don't know. Lighter, maybe. Or harder. I can't tell which." Elena sat down, pulled out the folder, and set it on the bed. "The bills are paid. Half of them, anyway. The rest will be cleared in a month." Margaret stared at the papers like they might explode. "What did you do?" "I took the job I told you about." "Elena." "It's done, Mom. I already started. The money's already paid." "Then give it back." "I can't." "You mean you won't?" Elena met her mother's eyes. "I mean, I signed a contract I can't break without consequences I can't afford. So yes, I won't." Margaret's hands shook as she picked up the folder, flipping through pages marked paid in full. Her face crumpled, not with relief, but with something closer to grief. "You shouldn't have done this," she whispered. "You wouldn't have let me choose. Because it's the wrong choice. It's the only choice." They sat in silence, the machines beeping steadily in the background. Finally, Margaret set the folder aside and reached for Elena's hand. "Promise me you'll be careful," she said. "I promise. And if it gets too dangerous, I'll get out. I swear." It was a lie. They both knew it. But Margaret squeezed her daughter's hand anyway, because sometimes love meant accepting lies you couldn't change. Elena stayed until visiting hours ended, then took the subway home and spent the rest of the night researching the Metropolitan Museum fundraiser. Guest list. Floor plan. Security protocols. She studied it all like she was preparing for an exam, memorizing details that might matter, trying to predict what Adrian would want her to notice. The earpiece sat on her nightstand, small and innocuous. She picked it up, turned it over in her fingers, tried to imagine what it would feel like to wear it, to have Adrian's voice in her ear, telling her where to go, what to watch, who to listen to. She didn't sleep much. Friday came too fast. Elena, dressed in black pants and a white button-down shirt, pulled her hair into a tight bun and clipped the museum badge to her collar. The earpiece fit snugly in her left ear, barely visible unless someone was looking for it. The burner phone went into her pocket. She looked like every other staff member. Invisible. Forgettable. Exactly what she needed to be. The subway ride to the museum took 40 minutes. Elena spent it staring at her reflection in the dark window, trying to recognize herself. The woman looking back seemed like a stranger. Same face, different person. Security at the staff entrance waved her through without a second glance. The badge worked. Adrian had been thorough. Elena followed the other servers to the employee break room, where a supervisor was handing out assignments. She got stationed near the sculpture gallery, responsible for circulating with champagne and clearing glasses. Simple work, the kind she'd done 100 times before. Except this time, she wasn't just serving drinks. The earpiece crackled to life as she picked up her tray. "Can you hear me?" Adrian's voice low and clear in her ear. Elena touched her ear once, the signal they'd agreed on. "Yes." "Good. Stay near the Rodin sculptures. There's a senator meeting with a defense contractor at 7:15. I need you close enough to hear them." Elena circulated through the gallery, letting the crowd flow around her. The fundraiser was smaller than the Plaza event, maybe 200 people instead of 500, but the wealth was just as concentrated. She recognized faces from television, names from headlines, people whose decisions affected millions of lives. And they talked like she wasn't there. She refilled glasses, cleared empties, drifted closer to the Rodin sculptures. At 7:12, a man in his 60s with silver hair and an American flag pin approached the statue of the thinker. 30 seconds later, another man joined him, younger, sharp-suited, carrying himself with the confidence of someone who'd never heard the word no. Elena positioned herself 3 feet away, pretending to adjust the glasses on her tray. The appropriations bill is stuck in committee, the older man said. His voice carried the flat vowels of the Midwest. We need more votes. How many? The younger man asked. 3, maybe 4. That's manageable. What's the timeline? 2 weeks. After that, it goes to the floor, and we lose control of the narrative. I'll make some calls, get you the votes. And in return, the younger man smiled. The contract for the new missile system goes to Daedalus Defense, sole bid, no competition. That's a $40 billion program. I'm aware. The senator hesitated, glancing around the gallery. His eyes slid right past Elena without seeing her. This conversation never happened. Obviously. They separated, moving in different directions. Elena stayed by the sculptures, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might be audible. Did you get that? Adrian's voice in her ear. She touched her ear once. Yes. Good. Move to the Greek wing. There's a group of lawyers near the amphora collection. I need names. Elena spent the next 3 hours moving through the museum like a ghost. She listened to conversations about tax evasion and offshore accounts. She overheard a pharmaceutical executive discussing clinical trial data he was planning to bury. She watched a real estate developer promise a city council member a 7-figure consulting job in exchange for favorable zoning decisions. Each time she reported back through subtle touches to her ear. Yes, for useful information. No, for nothing worth noting. Twice for danger or complications. By the time the event ended at 11, Elena's feet were screaming and her head felt stuffed with cotton. She disposed of her tray, changed out of her uniform in the staff bathroom, and walked out into the cool October night. The burner phone rang before she made it to the subway. You did well, Adrian said when she answered. I feel sick. That's normal. First time is always hardest. These people are criminals. Yes. And you're just collecting information, not stopping them? I'm collecting leverage. What happens with it isn't your concern. Like hell it isn't. That senator is selling votes for defense contracts. People could die because of that missile system. Probably, but they'll die in wars funded by taxpayers who have no idea where their money goes. At least this way, someone knows the truth. Elena stopped walking. That's not good enough. It's all I'm offering. Take it or leave it. She wanted to scream at him, wanted to throw the phone into the street and walk away from this whole sick arrangement. But $123,000 had already been paid, and her mother's next round of bills was due in 3 weeks. When's the next event? She asked instead. Sunday. Private party in the Hamptons. I'll send details tomorrow. He hung up before she could respond. Elena stood on the sidewalk, phone pressed to her ear, listening to dead air. Around her the city moved on, cars honking, people laughing, the world spinning forward like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. She'd crossed a line tonight, had become complicit in something she didn't fully understand. And the worst part was how easy it had been. How naturally she'd slipped into the role of observer, collector, spy. Maybe Adrian had been right about her all along. The weekend blurred. Elena worked her diner shift Saturday morning, slept through the afternoon, and woke to another package under her door. This time it contained a catering uniform, a wig that changed her hair from brown to blonde, and an invitation to the Hamptons party printed on cream cardstock. The instructions were simpler this time. Show up. Listen, report. She took the train to East Hampton Sunday afternoon, watching the city give way to suburbs, then to sprawling estates hidden behind stone walls and iron gates. The address Adrian had provided led to a mansion that looked like it had been transported directly from a European palace. Marble columns, manicured gardens, a fountain in the driveway that probably cost more than Elena's entire life. Security was tighter here. She had to show her invitation 3 times before they let her through to the kitchen entrance. Inside, the catering staff was already in controlled chaos, plating appetizers, arranging flowers, polishing silverware until it gleamed. Elena tied on her apron and joined the assembly line. The wig felt strange, tight against her scalp, but when she caught her reflection in a polished serving tray, she barely recognized herself. Blonde hair, different makeup, a stranger's face. Perfect. The party started at 7. Elena circulated through rooms that belonged in museums, carrying trays of food she couldn't pronounce. The guests were different from the museum crowd, less political, more corporate. CEOs and hedge fund managers and tech founders who'd built empires out of code and ruthlessness. Adrian's voice crackled in her ear at 7:30. Second floor, library. There's a meeting starting in 5 minutes. I need you up there. Elena slipped away from the main floor, found a service staircase, and climbed to the second level. The library was at the end of a long hallway, double doors slightly ajar. She positioned herself nearby, pretending to adjust a flower arrangement while actually angling her body to hear inside. 4 men entered the library. She didn't recognize their faces, but she knew power when she saw it. They moved with the confidence of people who'd never had to justify their decisions to anyone. The SEC is asking questions, one of them said, about the merger. Let them ask. We buried the evidence. Not well enough. They found the shell companies. Impossible. Those accounts were clean. Were. Past tense. Someone talked. Silence. Then, who? We're working on that. Work faster. If this goes public, we're all looking at federal charges. It won't go public. We'll handle it. How? However necessary. The phrase sent ice down Elena's spine. She'd heard Adrian use those exact words. Apparently, it was universal language for people who operated outside the law. She was still processing when the library doors burst open and the 4 men emerged. Elena kept her head down, focused on the flowers, praying they wouldn't notice her. They didn't. They walked right past, still talking in low voices about lawyers and investigators, and people who needed to be silenced. Elena waited until they disappeared down the stairs, then touched her ear twice. Danger. What happened? Adrian's voice sharp with concern. She couldn't respond. Not here. Not with other staff nearby. Instead, she headed back downstairs, worked another hour serving drinks, and didn't breathe properly until she was back on the train to the city. The burner phone rang at midnight. Talk, Adrian said. Elena told him everything. The merger, the SEC investigation, the shell companies, the implication that someone was going to be silenced. When she finished, there was a long pause. You're sure about the wording? Adrian asked. However necessary. Positive. That's a threat. They're planning to eliminate a witness. Can you stop them? That depends. Did you catch any names? No, but I can describe them. Do it. Elena closed her eyes, pulling up the memory. First one was tall, 6'2" maybe. Gray hair, expensive suit, scar above his left eyebrow. Second was younger, Asian, glasses, nervous energy. Third was built like a linebacker, bald, military bearing. Fourth was average height, brown hair, wedding ring, looked like an accountant. That's enough. I can work with that. What are you going to do? Find out who they are and who they're planning to hurt. After that, we'll see. Adrian, you did good work tonight, Elena. Get some rest. Are you going to save the witness? Another pause. Would it matter to you if I said no? The question landed like a punch. Would it matter? Should it? Elena didn't even know these people. Didn't know what they'd done or why they were being investigated. For all she knew, the witness was as corrupt as the men who wanted them silenced. But someone was going to die, and she'd provided the information that might let it happen. Yes, she said finally. It would matter. Then I'll do what I can. But Elena, this is the work. This is what you signed up for. Information doesn't come with moral clarity. Sometimes you hear things that make you complicit in ways you can't control. If you can't handle that, tell me now. I can handle it. Are you sure? No, she wasn't sure of anything anymore. But she said, yes. Okay, next event is Wednesday. I'll send details. He hung up. Elena sat on her futon in the dark, staring at the phone, wondering what she'd become. The next 3 days were a nightmare of normal life, punctuated by horror. She worked her shifts, visited her mother, tried to pretend everything was fine. But at night, she lay awake thinking about witnesses and shell companies and men who spoke about murder like it was a business decision. On Tuesday, Adrian called. The witness is safe, he said without preamble. I got her into protective custody. The men you overheard are under federal surveillance now. Elena's breath caught. You saved her. I provided information to people who could act on it. They saved her. Still counts. If you say so. He paused. How are you holding up? I'm fine. You're lying. Yeah, I am. Want to talk about it? Not really. Okay. But Elena, what you're feeling right now, the guilt, the complicity, the weight of knowing things you can't unknow, that doesn't go away. You just learn to carry it. Is that supposed to be comforting? It's supposed to be honest. Well, it's not comforting. I know, get some sleep. Wednesday's going to be a long night. Wednesday's event was a gallery opening in Chelsea. Thursday was a corporate dinner in Midtown. Friday was another fundraiser, this time at the public library. Each night, Elena disappeared into her invisible role and emerged hours later weighted with secrets she couldn't share. She heard a congressman discussing bribes, watched a CEO plan insider trading, listened to a judge accept money to influence a verdict, and each time she reported back to Adrian, who collected the information like someone filing receipts. "What do you do with all of this?" Well, she asked him after the library event, standing on the sidewalk at 1 a.m. "I build cases, create leverage, provide evidence to people who can use it." Like who? Journalists, prosecutors, activists. Depends on the situation. So you're the good guy. Adrian laughed, a short, bitter sound. "No, Elena. I'm just useful. There's a difference." "What do you get out of it?" "Money? Information? The satisfaction of watching powerful people squirm when their secrets come to light?" He paused. "Why? What did you think this was?" "I don't know. Revenge? Justice? Those are the same thing, depending on who you ask." Elena leaned against a building, exhaustion pulling at every muscle. "I'm tired. 3 more weeks." "That's not what I mean." "I know, but it's all I can offer." She went home, slept 4 hours, woke to her alarm and dragged herself through another day of pretending to be normal. The pattern continued. Events blurred together, faces became interchangeable. Elena stopped remembering names and started categorizing people by their crimes. The embezzler, the trafficker, the blackmailer, the fraud. Manhattan's elite was rotting from the inside, and she had a front row seat to the decay. 2 weeks into the arrangement, something changed. Elena was working a private dinner at a penthouse in Soho when Adrian's voice came through the earpiece, urgent and tight. "Get out! Now!" She froze mid-step, tray balanced in one hand. "What?" "Security just flagged your ID. Someone recognized you from the museum event. You have maybe 2 minutes before they start asking questions. Leave. Don't run. Walk normally. Out the service exit." Elena's heart slammed against her ribs. She set down her tray, turned toward the kitchen, forced herself to move at a steady pace, even though every instinct screamed, "Run." The service hallway was empty. She pushed through the exit door and found herself in a stairwell. "Down," Adrian said in her ear, "all the way to the garage level." She descended 12 floors, her footsteps echoing in the concrete space. Behind her, she heard a door bang open. Voices. Someone was following. "Faster," Adrian ordered. Elena picked up speed, taking stairs 2 at a time now, not caring about the noise. She hit the garage level and burst through the door into a maze of parked cars. "Black SUV, north corner, get in." She spotted it, windows tinted, engine running. The door swung open as she approached. Elena dove into the back seat. The door slammed shut and the vehicle peeled out before she'd even caught her breath. Adrian sat in the driver's seat, eyes on the road, jaw tight. "You okay? What the hell just happened?" "Someone made you. I don't know who yet, but we need to assume your cover is blown for that venue." "How did they recognize me?" "Could be anything. Maybe you stood too close to the wrong conversation. Maybe someone has better facial recognition than I anticipated. Does it matter?" "Yes, it fucking matters. If they know who I am, they don't. They know what you look like. That's different." Adrian took a sharp turn, merging into traffic. "We'll change your appearance for the next event. Different wig, different makeup. You'll be fine." "You can't promise that." "No. But I can promise that if you panic and quit now, you still owe me $123,000. So I'd suggest we figure out how to move forward instead." Elena wanted to scream, wanted to demand he let her out right now, consequences be damned. But she was 3 stories underground in a moving vehicle with no idea where they were going, and the man driving had already proven he could make people disappear. "Where are we going?" she asked instead. "My place. We need to debrief and plan next steps." I don't want to go to your place. Noted. We're going anyway. They drove in silence through the city. Elena watched streetlights blur past, her pulse still hammering, trying to process what had just happened. She'd almost been caught, almost exposed. Whatever game Adrian was playing, it had consequences she was only beginning to understand. The SUV pulled into an underground parking garage in Tribeca, the same building where Elena had first agreed to this arrangement. Adrian parked, killed the engine, and turned to face her. "Look at me," he said. Elena met his eyes. "You're scared. That's smart. Fear keeps you sharp, but panic gets you killed. So take a breath, get your head straight, and come upstairs. We'll figure this out." "How are you so calm?" "Practice. Now come on." They took the elevator to the third floor. Adrian's loft looked exactly as it had 2 weeks ago. Expensive, minimalist, designed for someone who didn't need comfort, just function. He poured 2 glasses of whiskey and handed her one. "Drink." Elena obeyed. The alcohol burned going down, but it steadied her hands. "Tell me exactly what happened before I called you," Adrian said. "Nothing. I was serving wine, moving through the room, same as every other event." "Who were you near?" "A group of lawyers. They were discussing a lawsuit." "What kind of lawsuit?" "Environmental. Something about contaminated water and a cover-up." Adrian's expression sharpened. "Did you catch any names?" "One Harrington. First name maybe Marcus or Malcolm, I'm not sure." "Marcus Harrington. He's a partner at Silverman and Associates." "Environmental law." Adrian pulled out his phone, typed something, then showed her the screen. "This him?" Elena looked at the photo. "Yes, that's him. He's representing a group of residents suing a chemical company for dumping toxins into their water supply. If he recognized you from another event, it means you've been near someone connected to that case. So that case has corporate defendants with very deep pockets and very dirty hands. If they think you're gathering information for Harrington, they'll assume you're a threat. I'm not gathering information for him. I'm gathering it for you. They don't know that. All they know is that a server who keeps appearing at events where their interests are discussed just got flagged by opposing counsel. That makes you a problem." Elena set down her glass before she dropped it. "You're saying I'm in danger. I'm saying you need to be more careful. Stay further from sensitive conversations. Change your appearance more frequently. Don't establish patterns. Or I could quit." "You could. And then what?" "The debt comes back. Your mother loses her treatment. And the people who flagged you tonight still think you're a threat, except now you don't have my protection." "Protection? You're the one who put me in danger. I gave you an opportunity. You took it. Don't pretend you're a victim here." The words hit like a slap. Because he was right. She had taken the deal, had walked into this with open eyes, desperate and willing. She didn't get to claim innocence now that consequences were appearing. Elena stood up. "I need to go home." "I'll drive you." "I'll take the subway." "Elena, I need space from you, from this, just space." Adrian studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay, but keep the burner phone on. If something happens, call me immediately." "What could happen?" "Hopefully nothing. But in this line of work, hope doesn't count for much." Elena left without another word, took the elevator down, walked out into the street, and made it 3 blocks before she had to stop and lean against a wall, shaking so hard her teeth chattered. She'd almost been caught tonight, almost exposed, and Adrian's solution was to change her wig and keep going. This was insane. All of it. She should quit, should walk away right now and deal with the debt however she had to. But her mother's treatment was scheduled for next week, the experimental therapy that might actually work. $124,000 worth of hope that wouldn't exist without Adrian's money. Elena pushed off the wall and kept walking, made it to the subway, rode home in a daze, climbed the stairs to her apartment and found another package waiting outside her door. Inside was a red wig, dark contact lenses, and a note in Adrian's precise handwriting. "Next event is Saturday. Wear these. We'll be more careful." Elena carried the package inside, set it on her kitchen counter, and stared at it for a long time. She'd become someone she didn't recognize, someone who traded secrets for money, someone who helped powerful people destroy each other and called it justice. But she'd also become someone who could save her mother. The question was, which version mattered more? Saturday came. Elena wore the red wig and dark contacts, worked a charity auction in Midtown, gathered more secrets, reported back to Adrian, did it all again Sunday at a political fundraiser, then Monday at a corporate retreat. The third week blurred past in a haze of other people's crimes. Elena stopped feeling sick when she overheard confessions, stopped flinching when Adrian described what he'd do with the information, stopped thinking of herself as Elena Hart, waitress and daughter, and started thinking of herself as a tool. Sharp, useful, effective. It was easier that way. On the 19th day, her mother started the experimental treatment. Elena sat beside her hospital bed, holding her hand while the drugs dripped into her veins, and tried to feel something other than numb. "You look different," Margaret said softly. "I'm fine." "That's the third time you've said that this week. I'm starting to think you don't know what the word means." Elena managed a smile. "Maybe I don't." "This job, is it hurting you?" "It's saving you. That's all that matters." Elena, please, Mom, don't ask me to choose. Not when we're this close." Margaret squeezed her daughter's hand. "Okay, but when this is over, you and I are going to have a long conversation about what you've become." "Deal." They sat in silence, watching the IV drip. Outside, the sun set over Manhattan, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Beautiful and terrible, like everything else in Elena's life lately. Her phone buzzed. A text from Adrian on the burner. "Event tomorrow night. High profile. Details incoming. This is the big one." Elena stared at the message. Tomorrow would be day 20. 10 days left in their agreement. 10 more days of this nightmare, and then she could walk away. If she survived that long. The details came through at 3 in the morning. Elena was half asleep when her burner phone lit up with a message that made her blood run cold. "Governor's residence, private gala, 200 guests. Security will be tight. You'll be serving the VIP room, restricted access only. This is where the real deals happen. Don't screw this up." Below that, another line that made her stomach twist. "Someone inside Adrian's network is feeding information to the people we're watching. I need you to help me find out who." Elena sat up, reading the message 3 more times. A traitor inside Adrian's organization, which meant anyone could be compromised, including her. She typed back, "How do you know?" The response came immediately, like Adrian had been waiting for her to wake up. "Because 2 operations got burned this week. People I trusted are dead. Someone talked. I need to know who before they sell us all out." "Why tell me this?" "Because you're the only one who doesn't know enough to be the leak, and because I need someone I can trust tomorrow night." Elena stared at that last sentence. Trust. The word felt foreign coming from Adrian, a man who'd built his life on secrets and manipulation. But there it was, bare and honest in a way that made her chest tight. "What do you need me to do?" she typed. "Watch everyone. Staff, servers, security. Anyone who seems too interested in the wrong conversations. Anyone who's paying attention when they shouldn't be. I'll be there too, posing as private security for one of the guests. If you spot something, signal me." "How?" "Drop a glass. I'll find you." Elena set the phone down and lay back against her pillow, heart hammering. 20 days ago, she'd been a waitress drowning in debt. Now she was hunting for a traitor inside a criminal intelligence network while spying on the governor's private gala. Her life had become unrecognizable. She didn't sleep the rest of the night, just lay there watching shadows move across her ceiling, trying to prepare for something she couldn't possibly prepare for. Morning came gray and cold. Elena dragged herself through a shower, forced down coffee she couldn't taste, and arrived at the hospital by 8. Her mother was sitting up in bed, color returning to her face for the first time in months. The treatment was working. "You look terrible," Margaret said when Elena walked in. "Thanks, Mom." "I'm serious. When's the last time you slept?" "I sleep." "That's not what I asked." Elena sat down, avoiding her mother's eyes. "The job's almost done. 10 more days. Then everything goes back to normal." "Will it?" Margaret reached for Elena's hand. "Because you don't look like someone who's going back to normal. You look like someone who's been living in a war zone." "I'm fine." "Stop saying that. You're not fine. You haven't been fine since you took this job." Margaret's grip tightened. "What happened to you?" "Everything. Nothing." Elena had watched powerful people trade lives like currency, had listened to plans for murder and corruption and worse, had become the kind of person who could hear about crimes and simply catalog them for later use. She'd crossed so many lines she couldn't even see where they'd been anymore. "I did what I had to do," Elena said finally. "That's all." "And what did it cost you?" Elena pulled her hand away. "Less than it would have cost to lose you." They sat in silence after that. Margaret eventually dozed off, exhausted from the treatment, and Elena stayed until visiting hours ended. Then she went home, dressed in the catering uniform that had been delivered that morning, and took the subway uptown to the governor's residence. Security was exactly as tight as Adrian had warned. Elena had to pass through 3 checkpoints before they let her into the service entrance. Metal detectors. ID verification. A guard who physically patted her down and confiscated the burner phone. "No personal electronics," he said. "You'll get it back when you leave." Elena's pulse spiked. Without the phone, she couldn't contact Adrian, couldn't signal for help if something went wrong. She was completely on her own. The earpiece was still hidden in her left ear, tucked under the red wig. The guards hadn't found it. Small mercy. She followed the other servers to the kitchen, where a supervisor was barking orders about timing and presentation. Elena got assigned to the VIP room along with 3 other servers, 2 women and 1 man, all professional, all carefully neutral. Any of them could be the traitor. The gala started at 7. Elena circulated through the VIP room, carrying trays of champagne and carefully avoiding eye contact with anyone who might remember her face from previous events. The room was smaller than she'd expected, maybe 40 people total, but the concentration of power was staggering. She recognized senators, cabinet members, Supreme Court justices, people whose decisions shaped the country. Adrian's voice crackled in her ear at 7:15. "I'm in position, east corner, don't look at me." Elena kept her eyes down, focusing on her tray. "The governor is meeting with 3 men near the fireplace," Adrian continued. "I need you close enough to hear them, but be careful. His security detail is watching everyone." Elena drifted toward the fireplace, moving slowly, letting the crowd's flow carry her. The governor stood with his back to the fire, flanked by 3 men in expensive suits. She positioned herself 6 feet away, pretending to arrange glasses on her tray while actually listening. "Can't keep blocking the investigation," one of the men was saying. "The evidence is too strong." "Then bury the evidence," the governor replied. His voice was smooth, practiced, the same voice Elena had heard in speeches and press conferences. "That's what we pay you for. We've buried what we can, but there are witnesses, people who saw the transactions. Deal with them." "Governor, we're talking about federal charges, conspiracy, racketeering. If this goes to trial, it won't go to trial, because you're going to make sure those witnesses disappear. Am I clear?" The man hesitated. "Yes, sir." Elena's hands trembled. She nearly dropped the tray. The governor wasn't just corrupt, he was ordering murders. Right here, in his own residence, surrounded by the most powerful people in the state. She touched her ear once, confirmation that she'd heard. Adrian's voice came back tight. "Good. Stay on them. I need more details." But before Elena could move closer, one of the other servers, the male one, mid-30s with dark hair, approached the governor's group with a tray of appetizers. He moved differently than the other staff, too confident, too aware. His eyes tracked the room with the precision of someone trained to notice details. Elena's instincts screamed wrong. She watched as he offered the tray to the governor's group, lingering just long enough to hear the tail end of their conversation. When he turned away, his eyes swept the room and locked on Elena for half a second too long. He knew she was listening. Elena's heart slammed against her ribs. She turned away, moving toward the opposite side of the room, trying to put distance between them. But she could feel his attention on her back, tracking her movement. "Adrian," she whispered, barely moving her lips. "There's another server, male, dark hair, black bow tie. He's watching me. Can you get a better look at him? Not without being obvious." "Then be obvious. I need to know who he is." Elena circulated back around, forcing herself to move naturally despite every nerve screaming run. She approached a group near the windows, offering champagne, and used the opportunity to glance back at the male server. He was gone. Panic spiked through her chest. "Where?" A hand closed around her upper arm. Hard, painful. Elena spun and found herself face to face with the dark-haired server. Up close, she could see the calculation in his eyes, the barely concealed violence in the set of his jaw. "We need to talk," he said quietly. "Outside. I'm working. Now." His grip tightened. "Don't make a scene." Elena's mind raced. If she screamed, security would come running. But this man worked security. He'd have credentials, explanations, ways to make her look like the problem. And whatever he wanted to discuss, it wasn't going to be pleasant. She glanced toward the east corner where Adrian had said he'd be positioned. She couldn't see him through the crowd, couldn't signal without drawing attention. The man pulled her toward the service exit. Elena went, calculating distances, looking for opportunities. The hallway outside the VIP room was empty, lined with paintings and closed doors. "Who are you working for?" the man demanded, shoving her against the wall. "I'm a server. I work for the catering company." "Bullshit. I've seen you at 6 different events in 3 weeks. Always in the right place at the right time. Always listening. So I'll ask again. Who are you working for?" Elena's mouth went dry. "I don't know what you're talking about." He leaned in close, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You're gathering intelligence. The question is whether you're Adrian Voss's or someone else's. Because if you're Voss's, you need to get out of here right now. This event is compromised." Elena froze. "What?" "There's a hit planned. Tonight. 2 targets. One's in the VIP room right now. If you're really working for Voss, you need to warn him before—" The sound of breaking glass cut him off. Then gunfire. The man's eyes widened. He grabbed Elena and yanked her into the nearest room, a coat closet, slamming the door shut just as chaos erupted in the hallway. Screaming, running footsteps, more gunshots. "Stay here," he ordered. "Don't move. Don't make a sound." "What's happening?" "The hit. It's happening now." He pulled a gun from somewhere under his jacket. "I need to get to Voss. Lock the door behind me." He was gone before Elena could respond, slipping out into the hallway and disappearing into the chaos. Elena stood in the dark closet, heart hammering so hard she thought her ribs might crack. Outside, she could hear shouting, orders being barked, someone screaming for help. Adrian. She needed to find Adrian. She cracked the door open, peered out. The hallway was empty now, everyone having rushed toward the VIP room where the shots had come from. Elena slipped out, pressed herself against the wall, and moved toward the sound of chaos. The VIP room was a disaster. Tables overturned, broken glass everywhere. People huddled on the floor while security swarmed. And in the center of the room, 2 bodies. Elena's vision narrowed. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think, just stared at the bodies, trying to process what she was seeing. One was the governor. The other was one of the men he'd been talking to. Both dead. Elena. She spun. Adrian stood behind her, blood on his shirt, his expression carved from stone. He grabbed her hand and pulled her away from the scene, moving fast through the service corridors toward the exit. "What happened?" Elena managed. "Assassination. Professional. 2 shooters, in and out in under 30 seconds. Adrian pushed through a door into a stairwell. "We need to leave. Now." "But the police—" "Will assume you're a witness they need to question. Is that what you want? To spend the next 12 hours explaining why you were at 6 different high-profile events in 3 weeks?" Elena's legs felt like water. "No." "Then move." They descended 4 flights of stairs, emerged into a service alley, and found the black SUV waiting with the engine running. The dark-haired server was in the driver's seat. "Get in," he ordered. Elena hesitated. "Who is he?" "Marcus. He works for me." Adrian shoved her toward the vehicle. "We'll explain later. Right now we need to disappear before someone realizes we're gone." Elena climbed into the back seat. Adrian followed, slamming the door. Marcus pulled out before they'd even buckled their seatbelts, tires squealing on wet pavement. "2 dead," Marcus said. "Both targets eliminated. Clean work." "Too clean." Adrian's jaw was tight. Someone knew exactly when and where to strike. "The leak?" "Has to be. This was planned down to the second. They knew the governor would be in that exact spot at that exact time." Elena's hands were shaking. She pressed them together, trying to stop the tremors, but it didn't work. "You said I was in danger. At the Soho dinner, you said someone recognized me." "I did." "Was that the leak? Was someone trying to identify me?" Adrian met her eyes. Probably. And you sent me anyway. To an event where people were planning to commit murder. Where I could have been killed. You weren't killed. That's not the point. The point is that we got useful information, and you're still alive. Everything else is noise. Elena wanted to scream. Wanted to demand he let her out right here, right now, consequences be damned. But the streets were blurring past and her legs wouldn't hold her, and Adrian was looking at her with something in his eyes that might have been concern if she didn't know better. Where are we going? She asked instead. Safe house, Upper East Side. We'll stay there until the heat dies down. I need to call my mother. Tomorrow. Tonight you stay off the grid. Adrian, this isn't negotiable, Elena. Someone just killed a sitting governor. The FBI will be all over this by morning. Every phone call, every movement, every witness will be tracked. If you contact anyone tonight, you paint a target on their back. Is that what you want? No, of course not. But her mother would worry when Elena didn't show up for tomorrow's visit. Would call, would panic, would be safer not knowing where Elena was or what she'd witnessed. Marcus drove them across the city, taking side streets and alleys, checking mirrors constantly. They pulled into an underground garage on East 72nd, parked in a spot marked private, and took an elevator to the 15th floor. The safe house was exactly what the name implied. Functional, anonymous, designed for people who needed to disappear. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen stocked with non-perishables, windows overlooking the street, curtains already drawn. Bathroom's there, Marcus said, pointing. Food's in the cabinets. Don't leave the apartment. Don't open the curtains. Don't use your real phone. How long are we staying here? Elena asked. Until it's safe, Adrian said. He was already at the window, peering through a gap in the curtains at the street below. Could be a day. Could be a week. A week? I can't. You can and you will. Because if you go back to your apartment or the hospital or anywhere else you're expected to be, the people who killed the governor might decide you're a loose end worth tying up. The words hit like ice water. Elena sank onto the couch, legs finally giving out. This is insane. This is the job. The job was gathering information, not witnessing assassinations. Sometimes they overlap. Marcus cleared his throat. I'll take first watch. You two should get some rest. He disappeared into one of the bedrooms, leaving Elena and Adrian alone in the living room. The silence stretched, broken only by the distant sound of sirens. Elena finally looked at Adrian. Really looked at him. The blood on his shirt wasn't his. She could tell from the way he moved. No injuries, no pain. But his eyes were different than she'd seen them before. Harder, colder. The eyes of someone who'd watched people die and barely blinked. Who were you protecting? She asked quietly. In the VIP room, when the shooting started. A federal prosecutor. She was the real target. The governor was collateral damage. Did you save her? Marcus did. Got her out through the service entrance before the second shooter could find her. Adrian poured himself a drink from the kitchen, downed it in one swallow. That's why we were there. Not for information, for protection. You lied to me. I gave you partial truth. It's not the same thing. It's close enough. Adrian set down the glass. You're angry. That's fair. But understand something, Elena. I brought you in because you're useful. I keep you alive because you're valuable. If you want to survive in this world, you need to accept that sometimes the people protecting you are also using you. That's how it works. That's twisted. That's reality. Elena stood up, needing space, needing air that didn't smell like whiskey and blood. I want out. 8 days left. You can handle 8 more days. I almost died tonight, but you didn't. Because I was there. Because Marcus was there. Because we knew the hit was coming and planned accordingly. Adrian crossed to her, close enough that she could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the weight he carried. I know this is hard. I know you didn't sign up for violence, but you're in it now whether you like it or not, and the safest place for you is right here, with me, until this blows over. And then what? Then you finish your month, I clear the rest of your debt, your mother gets her treatment, and you walk away clean, just like I promised. You can't promise that anymore. Not after tonight. Watch me. The certainty in his voice should have been comforting. Instead, it terrified her, because Adrian operated in a world where promises were kept through violence and control, And Elena was starting to realize she'd sold herself into something far more complex than a simple business transaction. She walked to the window, careful not to disturb the curtains, and looked out at the city. Somewhere out there, police were swarming the governor's residence. Investigators were photographing bodies. Politicians were scrambling to control the narrative. And she was here, hiding in a safe house with a man who traded in secrets and death. "Why do you do this?" Elena asked without turning around. "Do what?" "All of it. The intelligence gathering, the protection, the manipulation. What's the point?" Adrian was quiet for a long moment. "Because powerful people don't police themselves. Because the system is built to protect them, not stop them. And because someone needs to hold them accountable when the law won't. That's not justice. That's revenge. Sometimes they're the same thing." Elena turned to face him. "Who hurt you? What made you like this?" Adrian's expression shuddered. "That's not a story I tell." "Why not?" "Because it doesn't matter. What matters is the work. The rest is just noise." But it did matter. Elena could see it in the way Adrian held himself, the careful walls he'd built around whatever made him human. Something had broken him once, badly enough that he decided the only solution was to break everyone else first. She wanted to push, to demand answers. But exhaustion was pulling at her bones, and the adrenaline was fading, and she didn't have the energy for battles she couldn't win. "I'm going to bed," she said. "Take the room on the left. Lock the door if it makes you feel safer." "Will it actually keep you out?" Adrian smiled slightly. "No, but it might make you sleep better." Elena walked to the bedroom, closed the door, and turned the lock. It clicked into place with a sound that was probably meaningless but felt important anyway. A small assertion of control in a situation where she had none. The room was sparse: a bed, a dresser, a window with heavy curtains already drawn. Elena collapsed onto the mattress without bothering to undress, staring at the ceiling, replaying the night in her head. The governor's voice ordering witnesses eliminated. The sound of gunfire, the bodies on the floor, Adrian's hand grabbing hers, pulling her to safety. She should have been traumatized, should have been breaking down, crying, unable to process what she'd witnessed. Instead, she just felt numb. Maybe that was worse. She must have fallen asleep eventually because the next thing she knew, daylight was filtering through the curtains and Marcus was knocking on her door. "Elena, you need to see this." She dragged herself upright, unlocked the door. Marcus was holding a tablet, his expression grim. "What happened?" "Turn on the news. Any channel." Elena followed him to the living room where Adrian was already watching a flat screen on the wall. Every channel showed the same thing: the governor's residence surrounded by police tape, reporters speaking urgently into cameras, footage of body bags being wheeled out. Still investigating the shocking assassination that claimed the life of Governor Richard Hastings and his senior advisor, David Chen, the reporter was saying. "Authorities are searching for multiple suspects and have released no information about possible motives. The FBI has taken over the investigation." Adrian muted the television. "They're calling it terrorism, spinning a narrative about political extremism." "Is that what it was?" Elena asked. "No. It was a targeted hit ordered by people who wanted the governor and that prosecutor dead. But the truth doesn't sell as well as fear, so they'll run with the terrorism angle." "What about witnesses? Did anyone see the shooters?" Marcus shook his head. "Professional job. In and out through service corridors. No cameras, no traces. By the time security responded, they were gone." "What about the servers, the staff? Are they being questioned?" "Everyone who was in that building is being questioned, which is why you're staying here until we can fabricate a credible alibi for why you weren't there." Elena's stomach dropped. "What?" "You can't tell the FBI you were serving at a governor's gala where people got assassinated," Adrian said patiently, like he was explaining something obvious. "So we're going to create a paper trail showing you were somewhere else, working a different event, with witnesses who'll confirm your location." "You mean lying to federal investigators?" "I mean protecting you from becoming a suspect. There's a difference." "No, there isn't. This is obstruction of justice. This is survival." Adrian stood, crossing to where Elena was frozen by the couch. "Listen to me carefully. You were in that room. You heard the governor order murders. You were there when he got killed. If the FBI connects you to any of this, you become either a witness they'll hold indefinitely or a suspect they'll investigate until they find something to charge you with. Either way, your life is over. Do you understand?" Elena's throat was tight. You should have told me. Would it have changed your decision to take the job? Yes. Liar. You were drowning. I threw you a rope. You grabbed it knowing full well it might have thorns. He was right. She hated that he was right. What do you need me to do? Elena asked finally. Memorize the alibi we create. Practice it until you could recite it in your sleep. And pray the FBI doesn't dig too deep. Marcus handed her a folder. You worked a wedding in Brooklyn last night. Small venue, 50 guests. We've already paid the venue owner to confirm you were there. Here are the details. Names, times, descriptions. Study them. Elena opened the folder with shaking hands. Inside was a complete fabricated history of an evening she hadn't lived. Guest lists. Photographs. Even a timesheet showing her clock in and clock out. How did you... I'm good at my job, Marcus said. Now you need to be good at yours. Make this story real. Believe it. Because if you hesitate when they ask questions, they'll know you're lying. Elena spent the next 6 hours memorizing lies. The names of guests who didn't exist, the layout of a venue she'd never seen, details about a bride and groom whose wedding had actually happened but who'd had completely different staff. Adrian coached her through it, asking questions, poking holes, forcing her to think on her feet. By the time the sun set, Elena could recite her false alibi with the kind of casual certainty that came from lived experience. Good, Adrian said finally. You're ready. Ready for what? To go back to your life. The FBI will probably question you at some point. They're talking to everyone who's worked high-profile events in the past month. When they do, you tell them exactly what we practiced. Nothing more. Nothing less. And if they find out I'm lying? They won't, because we're very good at covering our tracks. Adrian handed her back her confiscated phone. Your mother's been trying to reach you. You should call her. Elena took the phone, saw 17 missed calls and 32 texts. Her chest tightened. What do I tell her? The truth. That you got called to work an emergency event and your phone died. That you're fine. That you'll see her tomorrow. More lies. Elena was drowning in them. She made the call. Her mother answered on the first ring, voice tight with worry. Elena, where have you been? I've been calling for 2 days. I'm sorry, Mom. Emergency catering job. My phone died and I couldn't find a charger, and it was chaos. I'm fine, I promise. The lies came easier than they should have. Smooth. Practiced. Like she'd been doing this her whole life. They talked for 10 minutes, Elena reassuring her mother over and over that she was safe, that everything was fine, that she'd visit tomorrow. When she hung up, Adrian was watching her with an unreadable expression. You're getting better at this, he said quietly. At what? Lying. Most people hesitate, feel guilty. You just did it like breathing. Is that supposed to be a compliment? It's an observation. Elena set down the phone. I hate what I'm becoming. Then quit. 8 days left. Walk away. Deal with the consequences however you want. You know I can't. Then stop complaining about the cost. The words were harsh but honest. Elena had made her choice 3 weeks ago when she'd called Adrian from her apartment. Everything since then was just the price of that decision playing out. Can I go home now? She asked. Marcus will drive you. Stay low profile for the next few days. No unusual movements. No contact with anyone connected to the events. Just work, hospital, home. Understood? Understood. Marcus took her back across the city in silence, dropped her at her building as the sun was setting. Elena climbed the stairs to her apartment, unlocked her door, and stepped into a space that felt foreign, despite being exactly as she'd left it. 2 days. She'd been gone 2 days, but it felt like years. She showered, changed into clean clothes, tried to eat, but couldn't force anything down. Instead, she sat on her futon and stared at the wall, replaying everything in her head. The governor ordering murders. The gunfire. The bodies. Adrian's hand pulling her to safety. Marcus revealing he worked for Adrian all along. The lies she'd memorized. The fake alibi she'd have to sell to federal investigators. 8 days left in her agreement. 8 days until she could walk away from this nightmare, if she survived that long. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You did well tonight. Rest. We'll talk soon. Elena stared at the message. Did well. Like witnessing an assassination was some kind of performance she'd nailed. Like memorizing lies to tell federal agents was an accomplishment worth celebrating. She typed back, "I want out." The response came immediately. 7 days, 19 hours. You can make it. Elena threw the phone across the room. It hit the wall and clattered to the floor, screen cracking but not shattering. 7 days and 19 hours. She could make it. She had to make it. Because the alternative was drowning in debt while her mother died and Adrian Voss collected on a contract she couldn't break. Elena pulled her knees to her chest and finally let herself cry, not from fear or trauma or guilt, but from the terrible realization that she didn't know who she was anymore. And she wasn't sure she'd recognize herself when this was over. The FBI came on day 23. Elena was working her shift at the diner when 2 agents in dark suits walked through the door and asked for her by name. The manager looked terrified. The other waitress went pale. Elena felt her stomach drop to the floor but forced herself to stay calm. "Can I help you?" she asked, setting down the coffee pot with hands that wanted to shake. The female agent pulled out a badge. "Special Agent Torres, this is Special Agent Kim. We'd like to ask you a few questions about your recent catering work." "Am I in trouble?" "Not at all. We're interviewing everyone who worked high-profile events in Manhattan over the past month. Standard procedure after what happened at the governor's residence." Elena wiped her palms on her apron. "I wasn't there that night. I was working a wedding in Brooklyn." "We know. That's actually what we need to verify." Agent Torres gestured toward a booth. "This won't take long." They sat. Elena folded her hands in her lap to hide the trembling and recited the alibi exactly as she'd practiced. The venue name, the bride and groom, the guest count, details about the reception that she'd memorized from photographs she'd never actually seen. Agent Kim took notes. Agent Torres watched Elena's face with eyes that missed nothing.
Can
"Can anyone confirm you were there?" Torres asked. "The venue owner, other staff. I clocked in at 5:30 and left around midnight." "Did you notice anything unusual? Anyone asking questions about other events you'd worked?" "No, it was just a normal wedding. Why?" Torres leaned back. "We're trying to establish patterns. The people who attacked the governor's residence may have been gathering intelligence on security protocols at similar events. If you'd noticed anyone suspicious—" "I didn't. I'm sorry." The agents exchanged a look. Kim closed his notebook. "Okay. Thank you for your time, Ms. Hart. If you remember anything, here's my card." Elena took it with fingers that barely functioned. "Am I free to go?" "Of course. Like I said, just routine questions." They left. Elena sat in the booth for a full minute after they were gone, breathing carefully, waiting for her heart to stop trying to break through her ribs. Her manager appeared at her elbow. "You okay?" "Fine, just shaken up. Take 5. I'll cover your tables." Elena went to the bathroom and locked herself in a stall. She pulled out her phone, the regular one, not the burner, and stared at it, fighting the urge to call Adrian and tell him the FBI had just questioned her. But the agents might be watching, might have her phone tapped, might be waiting to see who she contacted. So she put the phone away, splashed cold water on her face, and went back to work like nothing had happened. The burner phone rang that night at 11. Adrian's voice was tight when she answered. "The FBI came to see you." "How did you know?" "Because they're being thorough, and you're on every guest list for events I was monitoring." "What did you tell them?" "Exactly what we practiced. The wedding, Brooklyn, every detail." "How did they react?" "They believed me, I think. They didn't push back or ask follow-up questions." "Good." A pause. "You did well, Elena. I lied to federal agents. I'm not sure that qualifies as doing well." "You survived. That's what matters." Elena sat on her futon, exhausted beyond measure. 5 days left. Then we're done, right? You clear the rest of the debt, and I never hear from you again. That was the agreement. So why does it feel like you're not going to let me go? Adrian was quiet for a long moment. "Because you're good at this. Better than you want to admit. And people with your skills don't just walk away from the life. They find reasons to stay." "I won't." "We'll see." He hung up. Elena threw the phone across the room for the second time that week, then immediately retrieved it because she couldn't afford to replace it. 5 days, 120 hours, then freedom. She just had to survive that long. The next morning, Elena visited her mother at the hospital. Margaret was sitting up in bed, reading a magazine, and the difference was staggering. Color in her face, light in her eyes. She looked like herself again instead of a shadow wearing her mother's skin. "The doctor says the treatment is working," Margaret said when Elena walked in. "Really working. The tumors are shrinking." Elena's throat tightened. "That's incredible, Mom." "It's a miracle." Margaret set down the magazine, reached for Elena's hand. "I know what you did to make this happen. I know it cost you more than money." "Mom, let me finish." "I was angry at first. Angry that you'd risk yourself for me. But watching you these past few weeks, seeing what it's done to you." Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "I think maybe I was wrong to be angry. Because you're still here, you're still fighting, and whatever darkness you walked through to save me, you walked out the other side." Elena wanted to believe that, wanted to think she'd somehow emerged from Adrian's world intact. But she knew better. She'd memorized lies and watched people die and become someone who could do those things without breaking. That wasn't walking out intact. That was learning to live with fractures. "4 more days," Elena said quietly. "Then it's over." "And after that?" "After that, I go back to being normal, work my shifts, visit you, pretend none of this ever happened." Margaret squeezed her hand. "I don't think you get to pretend. I think you have to face what it changed in you and figure out how to live with that." "I don't know how." "None of us do, sweetheart. We just do our best and hope it's enough." They sat together in silence after that, holding hands, neither of them acknowledging that some changes couldn't be undone no matter how much you wanted to go back. Elena worked 3 more events over the next 4 days. Adrian sent her to a corporate gala, a political fundraiser, and a private art auction. Each time she wore different disguises. Each time she gathered information about fraud and corruption and crimes that would never see justice. And each time she felt a little less human and a little more like the weapon Adrian had turned her into. On day 28, Marcus showed up at her apartment at 2 in the morning. Elena opened the door with a kitchen knife in one hand, heart hammering. "What are you doing here?" "We need to talk. Can I come in?" She let him inside, locked the door, kept the knife within reach. Marcus looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, tension in his shoulders, the kind of weariness that came from carrying too much weight for too long. "Adrian doesn't know I'm here," he said without preamble. "Why are you here?" "To warn you. The leak. The one who sold out our operations. We found him. It was someone inside Adrian's inner circle, someone he trusted." Elena's blood ran cold. "Who?" "Doesn't matter. He's dead now. But before he died, he gave up names. People he'd sold information to, and one of those names is connected to what you overheard at the governor's residence." "The men discussing the merger?" "Worse. The people who ordered the hit on the governor. They know Adrian's been investigating them, and they know he's been using servers to gather intelligence." "Do they know about me specifically?" Marcus hesitated. "Not yet. But they're looking, and if they find you, I'm dead. Or worse. These people don't just kill witnesses, they make examples." Elena sat down before her legs gave out. "What am I supposed to do?" "Adrian wants to move you to a safe house. Keep you under protection until we can eliminate the threat." "For how long?" "However long it takes." "That wasn't our deal. 2 more days and I'm done." "That's what he promised." Marcus looked at her with something close to pity. "Elena, you were done the moment you walked into Adrian's life. He doesn't let people go. Not when they're useful, not when they know too much. He gave me his word, and he'll keep it. Technically, he'll clear your debt. He'll make sure your mother gets her treatment, but he'll also make sure you can't walk away without consequences. That's who he is." Elena wanted to scream, wanted to throw something, wanted to demand that Marcus tell her how to escape this trap she'd walked into willingly. Instead, she asked, "What do you suggest I do?" "Disappear, tonight. Take your mother and run. I can get you new identities, money, a head start before Adrian realizes you're gone." "Why would you help me?" "Because I've watched Adrian destroy too many people who thought they could handle his world. You're not like the others. You still have a chance to get out with your soul intact. But only if you leave now." Elena looked around her apartment, the futon, the kitchen table, the life she'd built from nothing. Small and shabby, but hers. If she ran, she'd lose all of it. If she stayed, she'd lose herself. "I need to think about it," she said. "You have until dawn. After that, Adrian's moving you whether you agree or not. Marcus left as quietly as he'd arrived. Elena locked the door behind him and stood in the center of her apartment, trying to make a decision that felt impossible. Run and live free, but hunted. Stay and live protected, but owned. Neither option was really living. She called Adrian at 3 in the morning. He answered immediately like he'd been waiting. "Marcus came to see me," Elena said. "I know, I sent him." "You what?" "To see if you'd run. To see if you'd trust him over me." Adrian's voice was calm, measured, completely devoid of emotion. "So, are you running?" Elena's hands clenched into fists. "This was a test. Everything's a test. You should know that by now." "Marcus said people are looking for me, that I'm in danger." "You are, which is why I'm offering protection. Not imprisonment. Protection." "What's the difference?" "One keeps you alive, the other keeps you compliant. I'm only interested in the first one." "I don't believe you. I don't care if you believe me. I care if you survive. So here's what's going to happen. Tomorrow night, you're coming to stay at my place. We'll keep you safe until the threat is neutralized. After that, you're free to go. Debt cleared. Mother treated. Exactly as promised. And if I say no, then you take your chances with people who torture their enemies before killing them. Your choice." Elena closed her eyes. "This isn't a choice. This is coercion. This is reality. I'm offering you the best option available. Take it or don't. But decide now because I'm done playing games. 1 week. You keep me safe for 1 week, then I'm gone. Deal. Pack a bag. Marcus will pick you up tomorrow at 8. He hung up before she could change her mind. Elena spent the rest of the night packing, visiting her mother to explain she'd be away for a few days, and trying not to think about how thoroughly she'd been outmaneuvered. Adrian hadn't trapped her with threats or violence. He trapped her with logic and necessity, and the simple fact that she had nowhere else to go. Marcus picked her up exactly at 8 the next evening. They drove across the city in silence, pulled into Adrian's building, took the elevator to the 3rd floor. Adrian was waiting in the loft, standing by the windows, silhouetted against the city lights, exactly like the first time Elena had come here. He turned when she walked in. "Welcome home," he said. "This isn't my home." "It is for the next week." He showed her to a guest room, larger than her entire apartment, furnished with expensive minimalism that screamed money. Elena dropped her bag by the bed and turned to find Adrian blocking the doorway. "We need to talk," he said. "About?" "About what happens after the week is up. About what you're going to do with the rest of your life now that you've seen how the world really works." "I'm going back to my normal life. That was always the plan." Adrian stepped into the room, close enough that Elena had to look up to meet his eyes. "You can't go back. You know too much. You've seen too much. The life you had before, it doesn't exist anymore. Then I'll build a new one." "Doing what? Waiting tables? Serving people who don't see you? Pretending you didn't spend a month gathering secrets that could topple governments?" "If that's what it takes, yes." Adrian studied her face like he was searching for something. "You're lying to yourself." "No, I'm trying to survive." "Survival isn't the same as living. It's good enough." "Is it?" "Because I've watched you these past 4 weeks. Watched you become sharper, more aware, more powerful. You were made for this work, Elena. Walking away from it would be like cutting off your own limbs." "You don't know what I was made for. I know what you've become. And I know you felt alive in ways you never had before when you were working. Don't pretend otherwise." He was too close, too intense. Elena stepped back, putting space between them. "What do you want from me, Adrian?" "I want you to stay, not as an employee, as a partner." The word hung in the air between them, heavy with implications Elena didn't want to examine. "A partner in what?" she asked carefully. "Everything. The business, the work, the life." Adrian's expression was unreadable. "I trust maybe 3 people in this world. Marcus is one. You could be another, if you wanted." "Why would I want that?" "Because you're tired of being invisible. Because you're good at this and you know it. Because working with me means having power instead of being powerless." Elena's heart was hammering. "You're manipulating me. I'm offering you a choice. The first real choice you've had since we met. The choice between working for you or being vulnerable to your enemies isn't a real choice. No. But the choice between building something meaningful or wasting your life in obscurity is. Adrian reached out, brushed a strand of hair from her face. The gesture was gentle, almost tender, completely at odds with everything else about him. I'm not asking you to decide tonight. I'm asking you to consider the possibility that maybe the person you've become these past 4 weeks is who you were always supposed to be. Elena wanted to argue, wanted to tell him he was wrong, that she was still the same waitress who'd asked a stranger to kiss her just to feel alive for a moment. But standing here in Adrian's loft, wearing clothes she'd bought with money he'd paid her for spying on criminals, having lied to federal agents and witnessed murders and learned to disappear into crowds, she couldn't quite make herself believe it. I need time, she said finally. You have a week. Use it wisely. He left her alone in the guest room. Elena sat on the bed, staring at her reflection in the dark window, trying to recognize herself. The woman looking back was a stranger, sharp where she'd been soft, guarded where she'd been open, dangerous where she'd been harmless. Adrian had done this to her, had taken someone drowning and given her tools to survive. But survival had come with a cost Elena was only beginning to calculate. The next 5 days passed in a strange limbo. Elena stayed in Adrian's loft, ostensibly for her protection, but mostly feeling like a prisoner in a very expensive cage. Adrian worked from home, making calls and typing on his laptop, coordinating operations Elena wasn't privy to. Marcus came and went, reporting on surveillance and threats and progress eliminating the people who'd wanted her dead. And at night, Adrian and Elena had dinner together. It started accidentally. Elena had been making herself pasta when Adrian emerged from his office, exhausted and hungry. She'd offered to make enough for 2. He'd accepted. They'd eaten in silence. The next night he'd cooked, steak and vegetables prepared with the same precision he brought to everything else. They talked about nothing important, books, movies, the weather, safe topics that didn't require honesty. By the 5th night, it felt like a ritual. Something Elena found herself looking forward to despite every instinct screaming that getting comfortable here was dangerous. Tell me about your mother, Adrian said over wine that probably cost more than Elena's monthly rent. What do you want to know? What she was like, before the cancer. Elena set down her glass. Strong, stubborn, the kind of person who worked 2 jobs to keep us fed and never complained about being tired. She taught me that survival wasn't glamorous, but it was necessary. Sounds like someone I know. I'm nothing like her. You're exactly like her. She survived by working herself to death. You survived by working for me. Same survival instinct, different methods. Elena hated how accurate that was. What about you? What made you like this? Adrian's expression shuddered. That's not a conversation we're having. Why not? Because my past is my business. But my past is your business? That's not fair. Life isn't fair. I thought you'd learned that by now. They ate in silence after that. Elena cleared the dishes, washed them in the sink, tried not to think about how domestic this felt, how comfortable, how completely wrong. On the 6th night, Marcus arrived with news. It's done, he said, walking into the loft without knocking. The network that was hunting you is neutralized. 4 arrests, 2 fled the country, 1 turned witness for the prosecution. You're clear. Elena's breath caught. I can leave? You're free to go whenever you want. Marcus looked at Adrian. You keeping your word? Always. Adrian pulled out his phone, typed something, then showed Elena the screen. It was a bank transfer for $124,000 to the hospital where her mother was being treated. Debt's cleared. Your mother's treatment is fully funded for the next year. We're done. Elena stared at the confirmation number, not quite able to believe it was real. Just like that? Just like that. So I can go home tonight? If that's what you want. Elena looked around the loft, at the expensive furniture and the city views and the man who turned her life upside down. She should have felt relieved, should have been racing for the door, grateful to escape. Instead, she felt hollow. I need to think about it, she said. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Think about what? You're free. That's what you wanted. I know, Elena couldn't finish the sentence. Didn't know how to explain that freedom felt less appealing than it should have. Adrian dismissed Marcus with a gesture. When they were alone, he turned to Elena. You're not ready to leave. I should be. But you're not. He crossed to her, close enough that she could see the gray blue of his eyes, the exhaustion he tried to hide. You know why? Enlighten me. Because for the first time in your life, you weren't invisible. You mattered. What you saw, what you heard, what you did. It changed things. Saved lives. Stopped criminals. That's addictive, Elena. Purpose always is. You're wrong. Am I? Then go. Walk out that door. Go back to serving coffee to people who'll never remember your name. Pretend you didn't become someone powerful. Elena's hands were shaking. I hate you. No, you don't. You hate that I'm right. She wanted to scream at him. Wanted to tell him he'd manipulated her from the beginning, that nothing about this was real, that she'd only stayed because she had no choice. Instead, she kissed him. It was stupid and reckless and probably the worst decision she'd made in a month full of bad decisions. But Adrian had been right about one thing. She'd spent 4 weeks feeling alive in ways she never had before. And standing here in his loft, free to leave but unable to walk away, she wanted to feel that alive just one more time. Adrian went still for half a second. Then his hands were in her hair and he was kissing her back with an intensity that stole her breath. It wasn't gentle, wasn't sweet. It was desperate and angry and honest in ways neither of them had been with words. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Adrian's expression was unreadable. That was a mistake, he said quietly. I know. We can't, I know. But neither of them moved. Neither of them stepped back. They just stood there, inches apart, the truth hanging between them like a confession neither wanted to make. Elena had fallen for the man who'd destroyed her life, and from the look in Adrian's eyes, he'd done the same. If you stay, Adrian said carefully, it can't be because you're afraid, or because you owe me, or because you don't know what else to do. It has to be because you want this. The work, the life, me. And if I do want it, then we figure out what that means, together. Elena thought about her apartment, her diner shifts, the life she'd built from nothing that had somehow become nothing anyway. Then she thought about the past 4 weeks, the fear and the power, and the feeling of mattering to someone who saw her as more than invisible. She thought about her mother, recovering in a hospital bed, alive because Elena had made impossible choices. She thought about who she'd been and who she'd become and the space between those versions that could never be bridged. I want to stay, she said finally. Not forever, not as your employee, but as your partner, for real this time. Adrian's smile was slight but genuine. Okay. Okay? You heard me. We'll figure out the details as we go. But for now, yes. Partners. He held out his hand. Elena took it, feeling the calluses on his palm, the strength in his grip. This was a mistake. She knew it with absolute certainty, but it was her mistake to make, and for the first time in her life that felt like freedom. One condition, she said. What? No more lies. Between us. Ever. I need to know I can trust you. Adrian's expression darkened. Elena, I mean it. If we're doing this, I need honesty. Real honesty. Not the version you think I can handle. He was quiet for a long moment, then, okay, no more lies. Promise? I promise. Elena knew he was probably lying about that too. But standing here with her hand in his, feeling less invisible than she'd ever felt in her life, she decided she could live with it. At least for now. At least until she figured out whether the person she'd become was someone she could live with permanently. The next morning, Elena called her mother. I'm not coming back to the apartment, she said. I'm staying with someone, working with them. It's complicated. Margaret was quiet for a long moment. Is this Adrian? The man who paid for my treatment? How did you... I'm your mother. I know when you're lying and when you're falling. Which is it? Elena looked across the loft to where Adrian was making coffee, moving through the space like he owned it, because he did. Both, she admitted. Be careful, sweetheart. I will. And Elena? Make sure he's worth what you're giving up. Elena watched Adrian pour 2 cups, bring one to her, hand it over with a small smile that might have been genuine. I'm working on it, she said. She hung up, took the coffee, sat beside Adrian on the couch while he pulled up files on his laptop, already planning their next operation. Outside, the city woke up. Millions of people living invisible lives, drowning in their own problems, surviving any way they could. Elena wasn't invisible anymore. She wasn't sure if that was better or worse, but she was alive. Her mother was alive. And for now, that had to be enough. 3 months passed before Elena learned the full truth about Adrian Voss. It happened on a Tuesday in January, the kind of gray morning that made the city look like it was rendered in charcoal. Elena was in Adrian's office, their office now, though she still thought of it as his, reviewing surveillance footage from a corporate event when Marcus walked in with a file folder and an expression that said nothing good was coming. "We have a problem," Marcus said. Adrian looked up from his laptop. "What kind of problem?" "The kind where Elena needs to see this before you decide how to handle it." Elena's stomach tightened. In 3 months of working as Adrian's partner, she'd learned that Marcus only used that tone when something was about to explode. She set down her coffee and crossed to where Marcus stood. He opened the folder. Inside were photographs. Elena recognized the location immediately. The Plaza Hotel ballroom. The charity gala where she'd first met Adrian, where she'd asked him to kiss her in a moment of desperate recklessness. But these weren't photos from that night. These were surveillance images, time-stamped 2 weeks before the gala. And in every single one, Adrian was visible. Not working as a bartender, working the room like he owned it, talking to the event coordinator, reviewing floor plans, examining guest lists. "You were there before," Elena said quietly. "You planned the whole thing." Adrian's expression didn't change. "Yes." The bartending position, being in the right place at the right time, noticing me. Elena's voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. "None of it was coincidence. You targeted me. I researched candidates. You fit the profile I needed." "What profile?" "Desperate. Invisible. Smart enough to handle the work, but vulnerable enough to accept the deal." Adrian closed his laptop, giving her his full attention. "I watched you work 3 different events before I approached you. Studied how you moved, how you listened, how people overlooked you. You were perfect." Elena felt like she'd been punched. "You manipulated me from the beginning. I offered you an opportunity. You chose to take it. Because you engineered a situation where I had no choice. My mother was dying. I was drowning in debt. You knew exactly how desperate I was, and you used it." "Yes, I did." Adrian stood, walked to the window, stared out at the city. "I won't apologize for that. You needed saving, and I needed someone with your skills. We both got what we wanted. I wanted to save my mother, not become—" Elena gestured at the office, at the files of criminals they tracked, at the life she'd built in Adrian's shadow. "This. And yet here you are, still working with me, still choosing this every single day." Adrian turned to face her. "So either you're still being manipulated, or you've decided this is what you actually want. Which is it?" The question was a trap, and they both knew it. If Elena claimed manipulation, she was admitting she had no agency. If she claimed choice, she was admitting Adrian had been right all along. Marcus cleared his throat. "There's more." "More?" Elena's voice cracked slightly. Marcus pulled out another set of photographs. These showed Adrian with her mother, at the hospital, sitting beside Margaret's bed while Elena was at work, talking, holding her hand. "You visited my mother?" Elena whispered. "Twice a week for this past 3 months," Adrian said. She knows who I am, what I do, what I did to bring you into this life. Why would you? Because she deserved to know the truth, and because I needed her permission." "Permission for what?" Adrian crossed back to his desk, pulled out a small box, and set it on the table between them. Elena stared at it, not breathing, not moving, her entire world narrowing to that single object. "Open it," Adrian said. Elena's hand shook as she reached for the box. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, expensive in a way that didn't scream for attention, but made its value clear to anyone who looked closely. "You can't be serious," Elena said. "I've never been more serious about anything in my life. We've known each other for 4 months. 3 of those I've spent hating you." "No. 3 of those you've spent lying to yourself about what you feel." Adrian took the box from her hands, removed the ring, held it up to the light. "I'm not good at emotions, Elena. I'm good at strategy and manipulation and reading people. But with you, None of that works the way it should. You're the only person who's ever seen past the masks I wear, and I—" He paused, searching for words. "I don't want to lose that. So you're proposing? With my mother's permission, after admitting you manipulated me into this life?" "Yes." "That's insane." "Probably. But I'm asking anyway." Adrian looked at her with those storm-colored eyes that had always seen too much. "Marry me. Be my partner in everything, not just the work. Help me build something that matters instead of just destroying things that don't." Elena wanted to throw the ring across the room, wanted to scream at him for thinking she'd say yes after learning he'd orchestrated their entire relationship, wanted to walk out and never look back. Instead, she asked, "What did my mother say?" "She said I was the worst possible choice you could make, and also probably the only person who'd ever really understand you. She said if you were stupid enough to say yes, she'd support it. But if I ever hurt you, she'd find a way to destroy me even from a hospital bed." Despite everything, Elena almost smiled. That sounded exactly like Margaret. "I need time to think," Elena said. "Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." Marcus collected the photographs and left quietly. Adrian returned to his laptop like nothing had happened, like he hadn't just proposed after admitting to systematic manipulation. Elena grabbed her coat and walked out of the loft without another word. She ended up at the hospital. Her mother was sitting up in bed, looking healthier than she had in years. The experimental treatment had worked. The cancer was in remission. Margaret Hart was going to live. "He told you," Margaret said when Elena walked in, "about engineering our meeting?" "Yes." "And?" "And I don't know how to feel. He manipulated me, used my desperation, turned me into someone I barely recognize." Margaret patted the bed. Elena sat, and her mother took her hand the way she had when Elena was a child. "Let me tell you something about men like Adrian Voss," Margaret said. "They're dangerous. They're broken. They operate in worlds most people don't even know exist, and they will absolutely destroy you if you let them." "Great pep talk, Mom." "I'm not finished. They'll destroy you if you let them. But if you're strong enough, if you're smart enough, you can turn that danger into power. You can take what they offer and build something bigger than either of you could build alone." "He lied to me." "He manipulated circumstances." That's different from lying. And before you argue, think about every conversation you've had with Adrian. Has he ever actually lied to you? Or has he just been selective about what truths he shared? Elena thought back. The deal at the plaza, the warning about danger, the revelation about the traitor. Every time, Adrian had been honest about what he was offering, even if he hadn't shared the full context. "He told the truth," Elena admitted. "Just not all of it." "Exactly. Which means he respected you enough to let you make informed choices, even if those choices were limited by circumstances." Margaret squeezed her hand. "That's more honesty than most people get from the men they love." "I don't love him." "Yes, you do. You're just afraid to admit it because it means accepting that you chose this, that you wanted the power and the purpose more than you wanted safety." Elena pulled her hand away. "When did you become his defender?" "When he sat beside my bed for 3 hours and told me exactly what he'd done to you and why. When he asked my permission to marry you instead of just assuming I'd approve. When he looked me in the eye and promised he'd protect you with his life." Margaret's expression softened. "He's not a good man, Elena, but he's a man who sees you as an equal, not a possession. That's rare, especially in his world." "What if I say no?" "Then you say no. But ask yourself this. Are you saying no because you don't want him, or because you're scared of what wanting him means?" Elena didn't have an answer for that. She left the hospital and walked through the city for hours, thinking about choices and manipulation and the difference between being saved and being trapped. By the time she returned to Adrian's loft, night had fallen, and the city was lit up like a constellation. Adrian was still at his desk, working. He looked up when she entered, but didn't speak, just waited. "I'm not saying yes," Elena said. His expression didn't change. "Okay. But I'm not saying no either. I'm saying I need you to earn it." "How?" Elena crossed to his desk, placed her hands flat on the surface, leaned in close. "No more secrets. No more manipulations. No more deciding what I can handle and filtering information accordingly. If we're partners, we're equals. That means I get full access to everything. Your operations, your finances, your past, all of it. That's a lot of trust. That's the price. Take it or leave it." Or Adrian studied her face for a long moment. Then he opened a drawer, pulled out a file folder, and slid it across the desk. Elena opened it. Inside were documents she'd never seen before. Contracts, bank statements, personnel files. And buried in the middle, a police report from 15 years ago. She read it twice, her stomach sinking with every word. Adrian's real name was Adrian Volkov. His father had been a federal prosecutor, his mother a defense attorney. Both had been murdered in their home when Adrian was 17, killed by people his father had been investigating for organized crime. The case had gone cold. The killers were never found. And Adrian had spent the next 15 years building a network specifically designed to do what the law couldn't: find evidence, expose criminals, and make sure people who thought they were untouchable faced consequences. "You built all of this for revenge," Elena said quietly. "I built it for justice. Revenge would have been easier." "Did you find them? The people who killed your parents?" "Yes, 3 years ago. All of them are either dead or in prison now." "And you kept going anyway?" "Because I realized the work mattered more than the revenge. Because there are always more criminals who need watching, more victims who need protecting." Adrian stood, walked around the desk to face her. "That's what I'm offering you, Elena. Not a normal life, not safety, but purpose. The chance to matter in ways most people never will." "What if I want both, purpose and safety?" "Then you're asking for something I can't give you. My world doesn't come with guarantees, but I can promise you'll never be invisible again. And I can promise I'll fight to keep you alive, even if it costs me everything." Elena looked at the ring, still sitting in its box on the desk, looked at the files documenting Adrian's crusade, looked at the man himself, broken and dangerous and honest in ways that terrified her. "I'll marry you," she said, "on one condition." "What?" "We start a foundation. Use some of your money to actually help people instead of just destroying their enemies. Fund medical treatment for people like my mother. Support witnesses who testify against criminals. Build something that saves lives instead of just ending them." Adrian's expression shifted. Surprise, maybe, or something close to it. "You want to launder my reputation. I want to give meaning to the work we do. Taking down bad people is important, but helping good people survive matters too." "Okay. Okay? Just like that?" "You're right. I've spent 15 years focused on destruction. Maybe it's time to build something too." Adrian picked up the ring. "So is that a yes?" Elena held out her hand. "It's a yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Of course it did, because Adrian had probably measured her hand while she was sleeping, or calculated the size from photographs, or done something equally invasive and thorough. She should have been angry about that. Instead, she just felt tired and oddly certain, and like maybe choosing the dangerous option was the only honest choice she'd ever made. "When?" Adrian asked. "When what?" "When do you want to get married?" "Soon. Before I change my mind." "Tomorrow?" Elena laughed, a short, sharp sound. "That's insane. You just agreed to marry a man who orchestrated your entire relationship. I think we're past worrying about what's sane." He had a point. They got married 3 days later at City Hall. Marcus was their witness. Elena's mother attended via video call from her hospital bed, crying and smiling and looking healthier than she had in years. The ceremony lasted 7 minutes. The kiss was brief, almost businesslike. 2 people sealing a contract more than celebrating a romance. Afterward, they went back to the loft. Elena's home now, officially, though it had been that for months already. Adrian opened champagne. Marcus toasted them with something that sounded like genuine warmth. Elena's mother called to offer congratulations and warnings in equal measure. And when everyone had left and it was just the 2 of them, Elena stood by the window looking out at the city and wondered what the hell she'd just done. "Regrets?" Adrian asked from behind her. "Thousands. You?" "None." "Liar." "Okay, a few, but none about you." Elena turned to face him. "What happens now?" "Now we figure out how to build a life together while operating in a world that wants us dead. Should be interesting." "That's one word for it." Adrian pulled her close, and Elena let herself lean into him, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. This wasn't love, not the way movies portrayed it. This was 2 broken people choosing to be broken together, Two fighters deciding the war was less lonely with backup. Two strategists building something that might be better than the sum of its damaged parts. It wasn't healthy, probably wasn't sustainable, but it was theirs. The foundation launched 6 months later. They called it the Hart-Voss Foundation for Witness Protection and Medical Assistance. It funded cancer treatment for people who couldn't afford it, protected witnesses in criminal cases, supported victims of corporate corruption and political malfeasance. The first person they helped was a woman who'd witnessed fraud at a pharmaceutical company and been threatened into silence. The foundation paid for her relocation, her legal fees, and her mother's medical care while she testified. The second was a man who'd blown the whistle on environmental violations and lost everything when the company retaliated. They gave him enough money to start over. By the end of the first year, they'd helped 63 people. Small number in the grand scheme. But 63 lives saved or protected or given a second chance. Elena ran the foundation while Adrian continued his intelligence work. Sometimes their worlds overlapped. She'd identify people who needed help. He'd use his network to make it happen. Other times they operated independently, two parallel tracks that occasionally intersected. It worked. Not perfectly, not smoothly, but it worked. Margaret moved out of the hospital after a year. The cancer stayed in remission. She got an apartment 3 blocks from Adrian's loft, close enough to visit, far enough to maintain independence. She and Adrian developed an odd friendship built on brutal honesty and mutual respect. They had lunch every Tuesday, just the two of them, and Elena had learned not to ask what they discussed. Marcus got promoted to director of operations when the network expanded. Adrian hired 4 more analysts, 2 field operatives, and a full-time lawyer to handle the legal complications that came with operating in gray areas of the law. The work continued. Criminals were exposed. Witnesses were protected. Some days felt like they were making a difference. Other days felt like they were just rearranging deck chairs on a sinking ship. But they kept going anyway. On their 2nd anniversary, Adrian took Elena to the Plaza Hotel. They stood in the same ballroom where they'd first met, now empty except for cleaning staff preparing for another event. "What are we doing here?" Elena asked. "Remembering." Remembering what? The moment everything changed, when a desperate waitress asked a stranger to kiss her just to feel alive. Elena looked around the empty space. "I was so lost that night, so scared. I didn't know how to save her." "I know. That's why I chose you. That's why it worked." Adrian pulled her close. "Want to know a secret?" "Always." "I almost didn't approach you. Thought you'd be too scared to accept, too cautious. But then I watched you for 10 minutes, saw how you carried yourself like you were already drowning, and I knew. You'd say yes because you had nothing left to lose." "Was that the manipulation? Reading my desperation?" "That was just pattern recognition. The manipulation was making you think you had a choice, when really there was only ever one path forward." Elena should have been angry, should have pulled away. Instead, she kissed him, there in the empty ballroom, recreating the moment that had destroyed and rebuilt her life. When they broke apart, Adrian was smiling. Rare expression, genuine enough to make her chest tight. "I don't regret it," Elena said. "Any of it, even knowing what I know now. Good, because I'm not done manipulating you yet." "What does that mean?" Adrian reached into his jacket, pulled out a folder. "The foundation is doing well, but it's small. I want to expand it. Use more of my resources to fund treatment and protection on a larger scale." "How much larger?" "National, maybe international eventually. Real infrastructure, real impact." Elena took the folder, flipped through projections and budgets and plans that would require millions of dollars. "This would eat up most of your liquid assets." "I'm aware." "Why would you do that?" "Because you were right. Destroying bad people isn't enough. We need to build something that lasts, something that matters even after we're gone." Adrian's expression was serious. "I spent 15 years focused on revenge disguised as justice. I want the next 15 focused on actually helping people. Will you help me do that?" Elena looked at the man she'd married. Dangerous, manipulative, broken in ways that matched her own fractures. He wasn't good. Probably never would be. But he was trying, and that counted for something. "Yes," she said. "I'll help you." They expanded the foundation over the next 3 years, hired doctors and lawyers and caseworkers, built networks in 12 cities. helped thousands of people access treatment they couldn't afford, protection they desperately needed, second chances they'd thought were impossible. It wasn't redemption. Neither of them was naive enough to believe their work erased the moral complexity of Adrian's intelligence operations or the lies Elena had told to protect their secrets. But it was something, a counterweight to the darkness, proof that people who'd made terrible choices could still choose to do better. Elena still worked events sometimes, gathering intelligence, listening to conversations people thought were private. But now when she heard about criminal activity, she had options beyond just reporting to Adrian. She could connect victims to resources, could fund their escape or their treatment or their fight for justice. She wasn't invisible anymore, but she'd learned that visibility came with responsibility, that power meant choosing carefully how to use it, that sometimes the right choice was still a terrible choice, just the least terrible of available options. On a cold morning in March, 5 years after that first kiss in the Plaza Ballroom, Elena stood in front of a room full of journalists and announced a new initiative, the Hart-Voss Witness Relocation Fund. $50 million dedicated to protecting people who testified against powerful criminals. The press conference was Adrian's idea. Elena had argued against it. Too much exposure, too many questions about where the money came from. But Adrian had insisted. This was the point, not to hide what they'd built, but to make it public, to force other wealthy people to question why they weren't doing the same. The first question came from a reporter in the front row. "Ms. Hart-Voss, where does this funding come from?" Elena smiled. "My husband built his fortune through private intelligence work. We're using that money to protect people who fight corruption. Consider it penance with a purpose." "Are you concerned about investigations into the legality of his work?" "We welcome transparency. Everything we do is documented and available for review. We have nothing to hide." That was a lie, of course. They had plenty to hide. But the foundation itself was clean, structured carefully to withstand scrutiny. And Adrian had made peace with the fact that someday someone might dig deep enough to find evidence of activities that crossed legal lines. When that day came, they'd deal with it, together. The press conference ended. Elena fielded questions for another hour, then escaped to the car where Adrian was waiting. "How did I do?" she asked. "Perfect, though the penance line was a bit dramatic. I learned from the best." They drove across the city to the hospital where Margaret was undergoing her 5-year checkup. Still in remission, still healthy, still alive because Elena had made an impossible choice 5 years ago. Margaret was sitting up in bed when they arrived, looking annoyed at having to waste time on tests when she felt fine. "Did they find anything?" Elena asked. "Clean scans, the doctor says I'm officially cured." Margaret smiled. "Thanks to you. Thanks to Adrian's money. Thanks to both of you. And to whatever desperation made you walk into his trap 5 years ago." Adrian settled into the chair beside Margaret's bed. "You're welcome. I wasn't thanking you. I was acknowledging the absurdity of my daughter marrying a criminal to save my life and somehow ending up happy." "Are you happy?" Adrian asked Elena. Elena thought about the question. 5 years ago, she'd been drowning. Now she ran a foundation that saved lives. She'd built something meaningful with a man who understood her in ways no one else ever would. She'd learned to wield power instead of being crushed by powerlessness. Was that happiness? Or just a more comfortable version of survival? "I'm satisfied," Elena said finally. "That's close enough." Margaret laughed. "Romantic. We're not romantic, we're practical. You're both. That's what makes it work." They stayed with Margaret for another hour, then drove home through the city that had witnessed every version of Elena's transformation. From invisible waitress to desperate daughter to reluctant spy to willing partner to woman who'd chosen power over safety and somehow made peace with that choice. That night, lying in bed beside Adrian, Elena thought about the path that had led her here. Every terrible decision, every moral compromise, every moment where she'd chosen survival over virtue. "Do you think we're good people?" she asked the darkness. Adrian was quiet for a moment. "No, but I think we're people who do good things. That's not the same, but it matters." "Is it enough?" "It has to be, because we can't go back and we can't be someone else. We can only move forward and try to build something better than what we came from." Elena turned to face him. "I love you." "I don't think I've said that." "You haven't. I wasn't sure you felt it." "I do." It's not the love people write songs about. It's messier, more complicated, built on questionable foundations, but it's real. Adrian pulled her close. I love you too. Have since the night you asked me to kiss you, and I realized you were brave enough to ask a stranger for what you needed instead of suffering in silence. That wasn't bravery, that was desperation. They're the same thing sometimes. Maybe he was right. Maybe desperation and bravery were just two sides of the same coin, different names for the willingness to risk everything when you had nothing left to lose. Elena fell asleep thinking about choices and consequences and the strange alchemy that turned terrible decisions into lives worth living. The foundation continued to grow. By year 7, they'd helped 12,000 people, funded treatment for 600 cancer patients, protected 300 witnesses, changed lives in ways that rippled outward, creating effects they'd never fully see. It wasn't redemption, but it was purpose. And for two people who'd started in darkness, purpose was more than enough. On their 10th anniversary, Adrian and Elena stood on the roof of their building, looking out at the city that had made and broken and remade them both. Any regrets? Elena asked. None that matter. That's not the same as no regrets. No, but it's honest. Elena leaned against him, feeling the steady strength that had kept her anchored through a decade of moral complexity and impossible choices. If you could go back, would you still choose me? Even knowing how complicated it would get? Every time. You're the best decision I ever made. Even though I was a manipulation target? Especially because of that. You knew what I was from the beginning and chose me anyway. That's not manipulation. That's informed consent. Elena laughed. You're going to use that defense until the day you die, aren't you? Probably. Is it working? Unfortunately, yes. They stood together in the dark. Two people who'd found each other through desperation and manipulation and built something neither could have created alone. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't clean. It was built on lies and blood and moral compromises that would haunt them both. But it was theirs. And maybe that was the only kind of love people like them deserved. Imperfect, complicated, honest about its own darkness. Below them, the city sparkled with a million lives being lived in the light. People who'd never know the shadows that protected them or the price paid to keep them safe. Elena thought about the waitress she'd been, invisible and drowning, asking a stranger for a kiss just to feel alive. That girl was gone now, transformed by choices she couldn't take back. But the woman who'd replaced her was stronger, more powerful, capable of changing lives and protecting the vulnerable and building something that mattered. Was that worth the cost? Worth becoming someone she barely recognized? Worth the lies and the violence and the moral complexity? Elena looked at the ring on her finger, the foundation bearing her name, the man who destroyed and rebuilt her life standing beside her. Yes, she thought, it was worth it. Not because the choice was right, but because she'd made it and survived it and somehow turned destruction into creation. And if that wasn't redemption, it was close enough. The city stretched out before them, full of people who needed saving and people who needed stopping, and people caught between those two extremes trying to survive any way they could. Elena and Adrian would keep working, keep building, keep walking the line between justice and revenge, between helping and manipulating, between darkness and light. They weren't heroes, but they weren't villains either. They were something in between, people who'd made terrible choices and chosen to make something meaningful from the wreckage. And in the end, maybe that was all anyone could do. Make choices. Face consequences. Build something better from the ruins. It wasn't a fairy tale, but it was real. And for two people who'd started with nothing but desperation and opportunity, real was more than enough. Elena took Adrian's hand and together they walked back inside, ready to face whatever came next. Not because they were fearless, but because they'd learned that fear was just another form of weakness to overcome. They'd survived worse. They'd build something better. And they'd do it together, partners in every sense that mattered. That was their happy ending. Imperfect, complicated, built on foundations that would never be entirely clean. But it was theirs, and that made it worth fighting for.